वक्रतुण्ड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste and a hearty welcome to one and all for today's 8th session of our series Gift, Gita for Inner Freedom and Transformation. Arjuna, in the 54th verse of Sankhya Yoga, or the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, raises an important question which is for the benefit of all us sadhakas on our spiritual path. Arjuna said, O Lord Keshava, what is the disposition of one who is situated in the divine consciousness? How does an enlightened person walk? How does an enlightened person talk? How does he sit? A clear understanding of the verses of today shall certainly be helpful in clarifying doubts which will arise during our journey of life. Today, verses 54 to 58 shall be presented by Dr. Diksha, Dr. Divakar Gautam, Srimati Shyamala, Dr. Raksha Ravishankar, and Dr. Satyanarayana Lale. We shall commence with a brief introduction to the topics of the day by Dr. Sundar, who shall also be moderating the session. Over to Dr. Sundar, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. So we are now in the 8th session of Gift, which is a revision of the Gita, selected verses. And for the previous sessions, we have briefly revised the first chapter and have seen the second chapter at a little more detail. And incidentally, first 47 verses of the first chapter and 53 of the second complete the first 100 verses of the Bhagavad Gita. And in a way, at this point, the teaching is complete. So the first chapter posed the problem, which was in the form of syndrome of raga, shoka, moha, or a sense of incompleteness, feverishness to look for completeness outside of me. And the second chapter thus far provided the solution, which was primarily Jnana Yoga, because of which Gita is called as the Moksha Shastra. However, Karma Yoga was offered as a step to make us fit for the journey of Jnana Yoga. And this culminated in a sense of each of us being an embodiment of fullness and completeness. So the things that comprised of the second chapter thus far were all these. And each one of us, and like Arjuna, might feel that these steps are tougher and toughest. So Adi Shankaracharya says that at this point there is scope for a question, Prashna Bija Pratilabhya. And therefore comes a question from Arjuna that Bubhutasya, I wish to know or desire to know, Lakshana, the description, the characteristics, the behavior, the conduct of a person who has culminated this journey of karma and jnana yoga. So Arjuna wants to know how this person is and then decide whether it is worthwhile taking this difficult journey. So he is asking Lord Krishna to give a description of at least one beneficiary who has gone through these 100 verses, the sadhanas described in the first 100 verses. And Lord Krishna's answer now set the scene for an interesting turn in this chapter, Jnana Yoga, as we have seen earlier, has been covered once, but Lord Krishna is going to revisit Jnana Yoga again. So, what is the difference between the Jnana Yoga that was covered earlier and what is going to be covered now? So, the Jnana Yoga covered earlier was of the description of the singular reality which makes up this creation, which we have seen as Atma in this chapter. And that Atma had these features of being Nitya, Satya, Sarvagata, Aprameya, Karta, Bhokta, and Nirvikara. Jnana Yoga that is being covered now is the same Jnana Yoga, but this is from the perspective of a person who is steeped in this knowledge and who is abiding in Atma. So the two large sections that are covered now are in the form of Lakshanani, or the virtues of a person who abides in the Atma, and a second set of verses which deal with the sadhanas that we can take to become one. So with this brief introduction, we'll go to the verses of today. I invite Diksha to present this verse. Over to you, Diksha.
Hari Om. Arjuna uvacha. स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा समाधिस्तस्य केशवः स्थितधीः किं प्रभाषेत किमासीत व्रजेत किम्. In this verse, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna, "Oh Krishna, what is the description of wise person who is established in the self? How does a wise man speak? How does he sit? How does he walk?" Arjuna wants to know the difference between a gnani and an ajnani, thinking that there will be some physical difference. The very word prajnaha means a wise person. Prajna means wisdom. The adjective sthita prajnaha is given to show that his wisdom is free from two-folded obstacles, samshaya pratibandha and viparyaya pratibandha. Therefore, such a wise person who has doubtless knowledge is called sthita prajnaha. Shankaracharya used the word samyak jnanam. When the sthita prajnaha is talked about, Arjuna wants to know what will be his behavior in life, what benefit he will be getting becoming a sthita prajnaha. There are three words that represent a wise person: sthita prajnaha, samadhistaha, and sthitadhihi. Dhihi means gnanam. Sthita prajnaha and sthitadhihi means the same, the one who has got a clear wisdom. Samadhistaha, this does not mean any yogic trance, but Shankaracharya interprets it as Atma. So Samadhistaha means the one who abides in Atma. Atmanishtaha or Brahmanishtaha is called Samadhistaha, a wise person who is in Jagrata Avastha. In Bhashya, it is given Sthita Prajnaha Yasya Saha, that is, the person who is the possessor of clear knowledge. Then, what is the meaning of the word Sthita? Shankaracharya says, Sthita is equal to Pratisthitaha, which means firm, without any doubt, without any habitual Deha Abhimana or family Abhimana, etc. This habit breaking is called Viparyaya Abhavaha. The meaning of Prajna is knowledge. That is, I am Param Brahma. Iti Prajna, such a wisdom, Yasya Saha, whoever processes this knowledge is called Sthita Prajnaha. Next, how will a Sthita Prajnaha speak? So Shankaracharya says, Paraiha katham bhasyate. How will other people describe Sthita Prajnaha? How will the Shastra describe Sthita Prajnaha? Bhasha means description. Next, it is the Samadhistasya, the one who abides in Samadhi, that is Atmanishtaha. Next is Kim Bhasyate means what will he talk? Here, Kim has to be understood as how. How will he talk? Kim asita? How will he sit? Vrajet Kim? How will he move about? Here, the doubt is, will Gnani walk differently, talk differently? So Shankaracharya says, Arjuna's tatparyam or intention is different. He wants to know the conduct of a Gnani, the lifestyle of a Gnani, the behavior of a Gnani. Therefore, Bhashanam, Vrajanam, and Asanam, all these words put together means Lakshanam, that is, the characteristics or the attributes. Sthitaprajnasya Lakshanam anena shlokena pritchati. Through this verse, Arjuna is asking, from here onwards, Bhagavan will give answers to Arjuna's question.
Thank you, Dr. Diksha. So we saw Diksha covering the Shankara Bhashyam as well. So the few things I have to add. One is that Kim actually means what, and Adi Shankaracharya corrects it by using the word Katham. Instead of asking what he's saying, how does he sit and how does he talk? And as I said earlier, this is the presentation of Jnana Yoga Part 2. One may ask, what is the connection between wisdom and the way of walking or talking? So Shankaracharya says that don't take this question literally. The Tatparyam or the intention is different. Arjuna actually wants to know the conduct, the behavior, or the lifestyle of a person who is steeped in Atma or who is abiding in Atma. Also, Adi Shankaracharya says that Krishna is now going to cover this topic starting from the 56th verse, which begins with Prajahati, up to the Adhyaya Samapta Paryantam, till the end of the Adhyaya. And he sets the purpose for this discourse here, that it is meant for a person who is Sthita Prajna. Two types of Sthita Prajna are described by Adi Shankaracharya. Pujya Swami Paramarthanandaji puts it as a direct Vedantic student, as an indirect Vedantic student. So belonging to the first category are those spiritual prodigies who are already born with sadhana chatustaya sampatti, and they go directly from brahmacharya ashrama to sannyasa ashrama because they have chitta shuddhi already. And second is indirect Vedantic student who go through all the steps of karma, upasana, jnana yoga. Another interesting thing that Adi Shankaracharya brings about here is Sarvatra Adhyatma Shastra, in all spiritual disciplines, Kritartha Lakshanani Yani Tani Eva Sadhanani Upadishyate. So, what are virtues for a possessor of Sthita Prajna? The same virtues are in the list of sadhanas for a prajna who is looking to become Sthita Prajna. So the virtues are spontaneously available or present for a Sthita Prajna, and those have to be deliberately cultivated by a person who is Prajna, who is looking to be a Sthita Prajna. So the list is the same, whether it is Lakshanani or Sadhanani. We go to the next verse. Over to you, Divakar.
Thank you. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanogataan atmanyevatmana tushtaha sthita prajnasthadochyate. To the question of Arjuna on Sthita Prajna, Shri Krishna answers by talking about Lakshanani, or the virtues or the characteristics of the Sthita Prajna, as well as the Sadhanani, or the disciplines required to acquire these virtues. So the Lakshanani are talked from the standpoint of a Mukta Purusha, or the one who is already anchored in the Gnanam, otherwise known as Sthita Prajna. On the other hand, Sadhanani are talked from the standpoint of a Mumukshu, the one who has the intense desire to become a Gnananishta, to become a Sthita Prajna. In verse 2.55, Shri Krishna presents Lakshanani. Here, important two virtues or of the Sthita Prajna are presented. The first one is the total inward fulfillment, which is Atmanyeva Atmanatushtaha, which is nothing but Purnatvam. And the second one is the freedom from all forms of the binding desires, Sarva Karma Abhava. Difference between the binding and the non-binding desire is that binding desires are those whose fulfillment gives extreme happiness and non-fulfillment gives unhappiness. The emotional ups and downs can't be escaped with the binding desires. Whereas in non-binding desires, there is no emotional oscillations on whether the object is there or not. In the next slide we see, as this is a very important capsule verse, Sri Shankaracharya gives an elaborate bhashyam. Prajahati means prakarshena jahati. Prakarshena means totally, which is both physically as well as mentally, renouncing all kinds of desires. Yadha, when prajahati is paritejyati, totally giving up sarvan kaman. Sarvan is total, samastan, which is all kinds of kaman, is ichha bhedan, varieties of binding desires. Tada, that person is called as sthita prajnasya uchyate. He is the sthita prajna. Where are these desires located? They are manogatan, which is manasi pravishtan. They are located in the mind itself, which is equal to hridi pravishtan, located in the hridayam, which is manaha, only according to the Shastras. Shastras consider hridayam as the seat of manaha. They are used synonymously. Specifically, this is told in the Kathopanishad 2.3.14. Yada sarve pramuchyante kama yesya hrudishritaha. That is from the Kathopanishad. So, in the next slide, we see, now a Purva Pakshi question arises. If someone renounces all the sources of happiness, will he not be miserable? If he is indeed still is happy, what is the source of that happiness? Shankaracharya says, there is still life to live, as there is the remaining prarabdha karma, which is referred in the Bhashyam as Sharira Dharana Nimitta Sheshe. So if one gives up all the sources of happiness, how to live the remaining life? And what is the direction for his activities? Because our direction of life depends on the desires. So if there is no desire, then where is the direction? Without any desires or direction, will that person not become either temporarily mad, which is called as pramattaha, or permanently insane, which is called as unmattaha? So it will be a meaningless, a purposeless, and a directionless life. This is a Purva Pakshi question. The next slide, we see the answer. Yes, all the external sources of happiness are renounced, yet the Sthita Prajna, this Gnani, is not miserable because he has got an internal source of happiness in the form of the very Atma itself. Therefore, Gnani is Purnaha or Santushtaha, not through Anatma, but through Atma. Atmanyeva is equivalent to Pratyagatma Swarupe Eva, within his own real nature. Atmana is equal to Svena Eva, by himself. So, in himself and by himself, he is happy. Shankaracharya says, Bahya Labha Nirapekshaha, without depending upon anything external, he is Tushtaha, he is happy. He is happy because of Paramatma Darshana Amruta Rasalabhena. Through the Gnanam, through the Gnanam, he has got the juice of immortality through Gnanam of Paramatma, which means the real self, the higher self, which is nothing but the Atma itself. He is Gnanamruta Tushtaha, Gnanamruta Truptaha. He is so full within himself that he doesn't need or require anything external at all. There is no need of external source of happiness, which is referred here as Anyasmad Alam Pratyayavan. Alam pratyaya means I don't need, or I have enough, so and so much that I don't need anything from outside. And such a person is Sthita Prajnaha, who is well established and well internalized within oneself. Especially when there are temptations from outside, his Purnatvam is more and more evident. Prajna, as told by Diksha already, is wisdom. Wisdom born out of Atma Anatma Viveka, discrimination between the eternal and the ephemeral. This Vidwan, the wise person, who is totally satisfied with oneself, born out of this wisdom, therefore doesn't require anything from outside and truly deserves a title of Sthita Prajna. In the next slide, we see Shankaracharya further gives a Bhashyam. Thinking as a sannyasi, this is a direct method that Dr. Sundar was talking about. Here, he borrows mantras from the Brihadaranyaka and the Mundakopanishad. He says, Tyaktva putra vitta lokaishanaha sannyasi atma rama atma krida sthita prajna iti artha. Word kamaha is indicated by three types of desires. Putraishanaha, desires centered on the family and the relatives. Lokaishanaha, desires on comforts like the type of the house, luxuries and comforts, etc. And then Vittaishanaha, wealth and the maintenance related desires. Swami Paramarthananda ji uses the acronym CLASP to explain this. CL is the controllership, which is Abhimana. Sense of ownership on body mind is Ahankara, and that of relatives and possessions is Mamakara. So CL represents Ahankara, Mamakara, Abhimana, both external and the body mind. A is anxiety. Once Abhimana is there, there is a fear of losing this, which is anxiety. Therefore, what do? We do SP, which is special prayers, also called as Sakhama Bhakti, to protect this clasp. This clasp is a shackle for the spiritual growth. In the next slide, we see a sannyasi, either Bahya sannyasi or a Antara sannyasi, will be out of this clasp shackle, will be out of this Putra Vitta Lokaishana Kamaha. By giving up this Kama, that dispassionate person is sannyasi. He will be Atma Rama Atma Kridaha, will revel with oneself. As told in the Bhajagovindam, Yasya Brahmati Ramate Chittam Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva. Therefore, no miseries, even if the external sources of happiness are absent. Then what is the direction to do activities? What is the direction to do karmas or actions for this Sthita Prajna? Directions are governed by two factors. One is the Prarabdha Karma and the other is the Loka Sangraha. As told in the Bhagavad Gita, we will see that later on in this gift sessions also, 3.33. Such a Gnani will either actively bless the universe or passively bless the universe. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you, Divakar, for a detailed explanation of this verse. You have covered most of the explanation from the Shankara Bhashyam. So this Purva Pakshi question, I wish to repeat for emphasis. So here is a person who has given up all desires totally, physically and mentally. So the Purva Pakshi question has two parts. So the first part is that having given up all desires, that is tushti karana abhavat. So there is no source of joy for him. And not just that, he still, although he has given up all the desires, he still has to endure prarabdha. Sharira dharana nimitta seshe. Nimitta is the cause for sharira dharana. That is the cause for the sustenance of the body continues, although he has given up all desires. So he has to live his long life, but he cannot have any joy. So first question is that his life is bound to be miserable, isn't it? The second question, which Pujya Swamiji adds, is that what then will be the motive for him to do any activity in his life? So the answer for that was that he has an internal source of happiness. He need not rely on anything externally. He did not desire anything externally to feel happy. And the second part of the question is that his prarabdha and swadharma decides what work he has to do. The desires need not dictate what activities he has to do. So that was the answer for the Purva Pakshi question. And we see Adi Shankaracharya explaining word by word what is the source of his happiness. That was described as darshana of Paramartha, which is the vision or knowledge. Paramartha here is the Atma, which is within oneself. So the higher self or the real self, the Atma, which is there within, is the cause for the total joy. And he need not depend upon anything from outside. So 3 words were introduced or asked by Arjuna: Sthita Prajna, Samadhistaha, and Sthita Dihi. So Pujya Swamiji explains that Sthita Prajna and Sthita Dihi both mean the same. So if you take the word Sthita Prajna, there are 2 parts to it. Prajna means knowledge. So this person has done Shravanam. So Ajnana Nivritti has been overcome. He has Paroksha Jnanam. But he still has 2 problems. One is doubt or samshaya, which is removed by mananam. And second is the problem of viparjaya, where you revisit your personality of your body and mind. So prajna, we can say, has overcome the first 2, that is ajnana nivritti has happened and samshaya nivritti has happened, but viparjaya has not been taken care of. So the first set of verses here, which deal with the lakshana, they describe a person who has the viparjaya nivritti also, whereas the next set, which will come later, they describe a person who is a prajna, but who has not yet had viparjaya nivritti. He is going through the process of nididhyasana. Now the lakshanas presented here, only one of them is in the form of a positive feature, that is Atmaneva Atmana Tushtaha. He is happy in himself, by himself, is a positive feature. Most of the lakshanas are of the form of absence of something. Like in this verse, the second lakshana was of the form of absence of desires. So in the next verse, there is going to be further description of lakshana in the form of absence of something. Let's go to that verses now. Over to you, Shamla madam.
Hari Om, Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. The 56th verse goes like this. Dukkeshu anudvigmanaha, sukheshu vigataspruhaha, vitaraga bhaya krodhaha, sthitadhir muniruchyate. In this 56th verse, Krishna continues with Sthita Prajna Lakshanani. 5 more descriptions are included. Mental disturbances are there for a samsari in different forms, and 5 forms of disturbances are enumerated here. Please note, all of them are absent for a jnani. Next slide, please. Adi Shankara explains the first word dukkheshu. Dukkham here means dukkha karanam, different sources of pain. Those pains are broadly classified into 3: adhyatmika dishu, like adhyatmika dukkham, adhibhautika dukkham, and adidaivika dukkham. Adhyatmika means pain coming from oneself. Adibhautika means pain coming from other jivas or other living beings. Adidaivikam is the pain coming from nature, because nature is governed by devatas. So from myself, from other living beings, and the other things in the creation. So when the pain adhyatmika dishu prapteshu come to disturb the jnani because of prarabdha, na udvignaman, the jnani's mind is not disturbed. Like Hiranyakashipu punished Prahlada in many ways, but little Prahlada was always calm. Dukkheshu anudvignamanaha. Next slide, please. The word sukheshu here refers to any happy, pleasant situation. Again, 3 types: Sukha coming from his own body or from the family members or external objects. When the threefold pleasures come his way, he is not tempted or carried away by them. So, Vigata Sprihaha, he doesn't have Trishna, a craving, or Kamaha to indulge in that. Adi Shankara gives an example. A fire becomes bigger and bigger when oblations are offered, but the fire of desire in a jnani does not increase even if he enjoys it when he comes across the pleasures. We can remember the portion in the Panchadashi wherein Vidyaranya gives a beautiful example. He says, even with alpa gramena tushyati, even a little bit gives him infinite ananda. Till now, we have discussed the first line. It is about samatvam. So this is the third trait of Jivan Mukta, Sthita Prajna. Next slide, please. Krishna says, one who is not swept away either sukha or dukkha is free from raga, bhaya, krodha. He is vita raga, bhaya, krodha. Raga means likes or attachment or dependence or psychological leaning, which is the fundamental trait of samsara. Bhaya is fear and krodha is anger. The more I am dependent, the more I feel insecure, bhayam, because whatever I depend upon in the world, that itself is insecure. An unintelligent person neither discovers security in himself nor tries to hold on to the Lord, but he goes on holding on to more and more insecure ones, like a drowning man holding to a grass. This is called ragaha. Therefore, the consequence is what? Bhayam. Yatra yatra ragaha, tatra tatra bhayam. Then what is the next one? Krodha, anger. Directly proportional to ragaha is anger. Because when I want to hold on to something, I find that there are many obstacles to that. And every obstacle makes me angry. Therefore, raga leads to bhayam, bhayam leads to anger. Ajnani is free from raga, bhayam and krodha. Raga, bhaya, krodha, abhava. Vitaha means freedom. This is the benefit of Gita study. How wonderful it is. Freedom from fear, freedom from emotional dependence. And such a person, we can see in the next slide, Sthitadir Muni Ruchate. Such a person is a Munihi, a saint. The internal transformation gives freedom, and one who has brought about this internal transformation, he is a sage. Even though he is a family man, he is very much in the world of activity, but still he will be a Munihi. Mananath Munihi. Munihi means the one who has got the right knowledge. And how did he become Munihi? Because of Sthitadihi, because of his knowledge. What type of knowledge? That knowledge which is converted into emotional strength. Sthitadihi is another word for Sthita Prajna. Not only he is intellectually strong, if anybody questions his basic philosophy, he is able to intellectually defend, because our scriptures deal with knowledge, not belief. Knowledge means clarity. Let anybody ask any question, he has got the understanding. Not only he is intellectually sound, but he has converted it into emotional strength that he enjoys peace of mind. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you, madam. So this verse followed the previous, where the two lakshanas were Atmaneva Atmana Tushtaha and total desirelessness, Prajahati Yada Kaman. So one was a positive virtue, Atmaneva Atmana Tushtaha. Second was total absence of desire. In this verse, there is 4 more which have been given. First one is Samatvam, which is he is free from mental disturbances because of happiness and sadness. And he is also free from Raga, Bhaya and Krodha. Adi Shankaracharya in Bhashyam makes a slight distinction between Trishna and Raga. Both of them seem similar. So the explanation given by Pujya Swamiji is that before we get hold of the object of desire, that craving is called Trishna. And once we get it, then you are attached to it. You don't want to let go of it. And that is called as Ragaha. In the next verse, which is similar to this verse, there is a description of 3 more virtues, again in the form of absence of 3 types of mental disturbance. We'll go over to Dr. Raksha. Over to you, madam.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Verse 57 goes this way. Yes sarvatra navisnehaha tattat prapya shubhashubham nabhinandati nadveshti tasya prajna pratishtita. This verse is the continuation of the previous verse in answering the question. Bhagavad-pada Shankaracharya introduces each of these verses with kim cha, meaning moreover, and continuing the Sthita Prajna Lakshanani. Yah Munihi, the sannyasi, the Antara sannyasi, Sarvatra Anabhisnehaha. Abhisnehaha is attachment. Anabhisnehaha is Abhisneha Varjitaha, the one who is free from attachment. Sarvatra is Deha Jivita Dishu Api. Next slide, doctor. It translates to Deha Abhimana or no Deha Abhimana. Abhimana to his body and the duration of his life also. The question is, how do we know whether one has Abhimana or not? Swami Paramarthananda ji clearly says, Yatra Yatra Abhimanaha Tatra Tatra Chinta. Worry is the indication of Abhimana. Next slide, please. And the second indication of Abhimana is Vishesha Prarthana. Every requisition and every special prayer represents Abhimana. Every Vishesha Prarthana nourishes samsara. Like Dr. Divakar said, clasp. So each one of us have to come out of the clasp shackle. Tat tat shubha shubham prapya. Various pleasant and unpleasant, favorable and unfavorable things happen in our lives. Shubham prapya na abhinandati, meaning he is not elated with favorable things, which is the same as na tushtati na hrishyati. Ashubham prapya na dveshti. When unfavorable events happen, he is neither angry with God. Such a person is a jnani. In Vedanta, a karma yogi sadhaka should start practicing this. Tasya, for him, though he has dropped Vishesha Prarthana, Nishkama Prarthana is there in Karma Yoga, and that gives strength to him. Next slide, please. And for a jnani, jnanam gives him the strength. Thus, bhakti and jnana give strength to welcome anything unfavorable. Tasya dhirasya, for such a strong-willed person, harsha vishada varjitasya, the one who is free from elation and depression, vivekaja prajna pratishtita bhavati, the wisdom born out of Vedantic inquiry becomes well established. In these verses, Atmaneva Atmana Tushta, that is being happy with oneself, is the positive feature, and everything else is freedom from something. 56th verse mentioned about freedom from Udvega, Spruha, Raga, Bhaya, and Krodha. And 57th verse mentions the 3 nivrittis. Abhisneha nivrittihi, which can be taken as Raga itself. Abhinandana nivritti, which is Harsha or elation. And Dvesha nivritti. Thank you, sir. Namaste.
Thank you, madam, for presentation of that verse. So just to recall, we have covered about 7 Lakshanani so far. The first was the positive Lakshanani, Atmaneva Atmana Tushtaha. The second was Prajahati Sarvan Kaman, which is freedom from desires, physical and mental. Then was Samat from Sukha and Dukkha. Then was freedom from Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. And now in this verse was freedom from Abhimana to Deha, and also freedom from elation and depression. So there is a slight turn that the chapter takes at this point. So as I said earlier, we can see our spiritual progress as a 5-stepped staircase. So you can see it as Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. So there is a nivritti happening at each of these steps. So the first step, there is Manana Nivritti. Second step, there is Vikshepa Nivritti. Third step, Ajnana Nivritti, Samshaya Nivritti, and Viparyaya Nivritti. So listed 7 Lakshanani so far belong to a person who has taken all the 5 steps successfully, and he enjoys spontaneously these virtues. Now the chapter turns to a person who has covered 4 steps. That is, he has Mala Vikshepa Nivritti, Ajnana Nivritti, and Samshaya Nivritti. So he has Atma Jnanam, but he is unable to continuously abide in Atma. What that means is that he frequently revisits and believes himself to be this body and mind. Therefore, his emotional responses sometimes are not in tune with his Atma status, but they are sometimes in tune with his physical and mental personality. So for him, Viparyaya is a constant botheration. And for that Viparyaya Nivritti, the solution that is given is Nididhyasanam. So while he is practicing Nididhyasanam, now Lord Krishna is going to suggest what are the sadhanas which will help to convert his prajna to sthita prajna. That is going to convert his knowledge into emotional strength. So let us see what are those sadhanas which help one to become a sthita prajna from prajna. Over to you, Satyanarayan sir.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Verse 2.58 goes like this. Yada samharate chayam kurmo angani vasarvashaha indriyani indriyarthebhya tasya prajna pratishtitaha. Going by the word meanings, kurmo anganiva sarvashaha. He's telling, as the tortoise withdraws its limbs fully, indriyani indriyarthebhyas, senses are to be withdrawn from sense objects. Tasya prajna pratishtitaha. One who is able to do this is wise. So the word verse meaning is, next slide, one who is able to withdraw the senses from their objects, just as the tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell, is established in divine wisdom. Next slide. So as Dr. Sundar has summarized and told, up to verse 57, that is the last verse, Krishna has talked about a person who has attained knowledge and who has converted the knowledge into emotional strength. Not only he has become prajna, he has become sthita prajna. Not mere cognitive, but there is emotional transformation also. So from verse 58 onwards, Krishna explains how a person can convert the knowledge into emotional strength. So far, he has explained what, that is regarding characteristics of sthita prajna. Now on, he explains how. Let us see. Next slide. He talks about 3 sadhanas to convert self-knowledge into emotional strength. Nididhyasana, that is dwelling upon the teaching. I do not depend on anything to be happy. Indriya Nigraha, regulation of the sense organs, that is Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, and Gandha, regulation of all these. Mano Nigraha, regulation of the thought process also. Of these three processes, that is Nitidhyasana, Indriya Nigraha, Mano Nigraha, Krishna is highlighting the sensory regulation first from the verse 58 to 61. This is for those who have become prajna but not sthita prajna. A sthita prajna does not need sensory regulation because his knowledge is so firm. He has already become a tree, whereas a prajna is still a plant which needs protection. Krishna gives a beautiful example of sensory regulation, and the example of he gives is a tortoise. Every other animal has horns or nails to fight back, but the tortoise do not have any weapon. Therefore, the god has given it a protective armor. Tortoise keeps moving around, and whenever it sees even a slight danger, it withdraws all its forelimbs and its head. Whenever the threat is gone, it puts out its limbs and head and moves forwards. Similarly, a prajna can transact with freely, but the moment he sees there is an occasion where raga, dvesha, kama, krodha may be provoked or invoked, then ego can become stronger. As they say, prevention is better than cure. And once you get into an argument, if you can successfully withdraw the senses, it is a great achievement. Like the kurma withdraws, in the same way, a prajna should withdraw the sense organs from the sense objects judiciously and intelligently. He would then become a sthita prajna. Next slide. Attempting to quench the cravings of these senses by supplying them with their desired objects is like trying to douse a fire by pouring clarified butter on it. The fire may be smothered for a moment, but then it flares up with redoubled intensity. Hence, desires never go away when they are fulfilled. They only come back more strongly. The same logic applies to desires also. This here also. The mind and senses throw up myriad desires for happiness, but as long as we are in the game of fulfilling them, happiness remains illusory, like a mirage. But when we learn to discard all these desires to find happiness in God, the mind and senses make peace with us. So, an enlightened sage intelligently masters the senses and the mind. The enlightened soul possesses similar control over the mind and senses and can retract and extract them according to the needs of the situation. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Satyanarayana. So Adi Shankaracharya goes to this verse with this words kimcha, which means moreover or continuing with the same topic. So as Dr. Satyanarayana mentioned, these set of verses are meant for a prajna to convert to sthita prajna. We have seen earlier that what were lakshanani can be sadhanani also. So the earlier verses mentioned several lakshanani, which are spontaneously available virtues, which have to be deliberately lived or deliberately incorporated into our life. In addition, these set of verses, primarily the focus is on dhamma, sama, and nididhyasana, the discussion of which goes on till verses 60 to 63. Adi Shankaracharya translates samharate as samyag upasamharate. So samyag here refers to being very alert, and upasamharate refers to sensory withdrawal, as was beautifully explained with the imagery of the tortoise. So one has to be alert and one has to withdraw. For the tortoise, the threat is a physical threat and the withdrawal is a physical withdrawal. For the person who is prajna, the threat is one of senses which can sway away the mind, and the withdrawal also has to be sensory. So that means to close the sense organs or move away from the sight. So jnana nisthayam pravrittaha means the person who is on the path of jnana nistha. That is one who is doing nididhyasanam. And yatihi refers to, Pujya Swamiji explains with the acronym port and clasp. So clasp was already explained by Devakar. And we know that possession, obligation, and relation and transaction. So these things, this yatihi has kept them at bay. So kurmaha angani iva sarvashaha. Adi Shankara translates as yata kurmo bhayat swani angani upasamharate, which is understandable. Sarvataha evam jnananistha. Indriyan indriyarthebhya, he translates as sarva vishayebhya upasamharate. He withdraws from all vishayas or sense objects. Tasya prajna pratisthita iti ukthartam vakyam. This is the meaning of this statement, that the person who is successfully able to withdraw, his prajna is pratisthita. Prajna is knowledge. Knowledge is atmajnanam. Pratisthita is firm. So he ends by saying that who is successfully able to do this, he is Tita Prajna. But as we discussed earlier, deliberate practice will help a Prajna to become a Stita Prajna.
Friends, you're aware that we have been inviting all our followers to send in their voluntary contributions. I take this opportunity to thank all of you who have sent your contributions to our collective Guru Dakshina. I take this opportunity also to request you to update the Google Forms. The details submitted will help us account the contributions properly and issue you a receipt appropriately. All contributions received are purely voluntary without any compulsion of any nature. Be assured that the entire amount thus collected will reach the lotus feet of our Gurus. On behalf of Param Vedanta, I would like to thank all the participants who have joined us for today's session. I thank Dr. Sundar and all our speakers who have made excellent presentations. These are very important verses, and probably we should listen to them again. We shall be back on Friday, 12th of January 2024 with our 10th session of Kathopanishad with verses 16 to 20 from the Prathama Adhyaya Dvitiyavalli. Remember to join us on time and benefit from the enlightening knowledge of Kathopanishad. This brings us to an end of today's program. Let us conclude with the Shanti Mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.